It feels like you're the only one still stuck, like everyone else quietly figured it out. While you're still here, turning the same thoughts over, revisiting the same feeling, wondering why it hasn't loosened its grip yet. You scroll past their updates, new jobs, new relationships, new routines, photos where they look lighter than you remember. They seem steady, certain, already on the other side of something. And you're left with this quiet question. Why am I still here? Not loud, not dramatic, just a soft, persistent ache that shows up most clearly at night, when there's nothing to distract you from the comparison. During the day, you manage. You answer what needs answering. You move through your tasks. You smile when it's expected. You function. But at 1 a.m., functioning doesn't feel like progress. It feels like standing still, while everyone else walks forward. You replay timelines in your head. They went through the same thing. They seem fine now. They moved on months ago. And then quietly, so why can't I? It's not jealousy exactly. It's something heavier. A mix of confusion and a little shame. Because you don't want to feel behind. You don't want your healing to feel slower, or messier, or more complicated than theirs. You wanted this to be simpler. You wanted a moment where something inside you clicked, and the weight lifted, and you could say, okay, I'm past it now. But instead, healing feels less like a switch, and more like weather. Some days clear, some days heavy, some nights like this, quiet, reflective, unsure. Comparison makes that uncertainty sharper. Because when you look at others, you don't see their quiet nights. You see their highlights. You see the version of their story that fits into a caption, a quick conversation, a polite "I'm doing better now." You don't see what it costs them internally to look that steady. You don't see the moments they hesitate before replying, the thoughts they don't share, the memories they still avoid, the parts of their healing that don't photograph well. Progress is loud on the outside, but healing is mostly invisible. And invisible growth is easy to dismiss. When you're measuring yourself against visible outcomes, you might be thinking, if I were really healing, I wouldn't still feel this. But feelings don't follow public timelines. They don't check how others are doing before deciding whether to stay or leave. They move according to depth. And depth is personal. Two people can walk through the same event and carry entirely different layers from it. One might process quickly. Another might carry questions that take longer to unfold. Not because one is stronger, because one story touched different roots. Maybe what you went through connected to something older in you, a past insecurity, a childhood belief, a fear you didn't realize was there. When something touches those deeper places, it doesn't just pass through. It settles. It asks to be understood. That takes time. Not performative time. Not socially acceptable time. Real time. Quiet internal time. The kind that doesn't show up in visible milestones. And that's the part comparison ignores. It assumes every story starts at the same depth. But yours might have started further down. Healing doesn't just mean moving forward. It often means moving inward. And inward progress looks slow from the outside, because nobody can see it. They don't see the way you pause before reacting now. They don't see the boundaries you're learning to set quietly. They don't see how much gentler your inner voice has become. They don't see the nights you choose reflection over avoidance. Those shifts matter, but they're private. So when you compare your inside to their outside, it will always feel like you're behind. Triggers make this worse. They arrive quietly. A memory surfaces when you hear a certain song. A conversation echoes something familiar. A place reminds you of how things used to feel. Suddenly, the feeling is back. Not because you haven't healed, because healing revisits layers. Earlier, maybe you processed the obvious hurt. Now, maybe you're touching the meaning underneath it. What it changed about how you trust, how you see yourself, how safe you feel opening up again. Those are deeper layers. They don't resolve on a schedule. They unfold when you're ready enough to hold them. But when a trigger hits, your first thought might be, "See, I'm still stuck." It's an easy conclusion, but not an accurate one. Feeling something again isn't proof you haven't moved. It's often proof you're noticing more clearly now. Earlier, you might have drowned in the feeling. Tonight, maybe you're sitting with it. Still uncomfortable, still heavy, but aware. That awareness is growth, even if it doesn't feel impressive. Invisible growth rarely does. It's like roots expanding underground. Nothing looks different on the surface yet, but stability is forming quietly. Comparison doesn't account for roots. It only notices branches. So it tells you, they're further ahead. But ahead of what? There's no universal track here. No shared finish line. No standard pace. Only individual paths. And yours includes moments of pause. Pausing isn't failing. Sometimes pausing is how you avoid repeating the same hurt. Sometimes pausing means you're learning something thoroughly, instead of rushing past it. You might worry that this means you'll always feel this way. That's a heavy thought. But notice, you don't feel it constantly anymore. There are gaps now. Hours, days, maybe longer. That wasn't always true. Those gaps are progress. They just don't feel dramatic enough to count. But they count. Growth often arrives quietly. So quietly that you miss it. Because you expected something louder. You expected to wake up one day and feel completely different. Instead, you became slightly steadier over time. Slightly calmer. Slightly clearer. Slightly more able to carry what once felt unbearable. Those small shifts are real, even if they don't look like moving on. Maybe moving on was never the right phrase. Maybe it's more like moving with. Learning how to carry the experience without letting it control your direction. That takes patience. And patience is hard when you feel like everyone else already arrived somewhere. But again, you don't actually know where they are internally. You only know what's visible. And visible isn't the full story. Here's a gentle question to sit with. What if your timeline was never behind? Let that land slowly. What if you're not late? What if you're exactly where someone becomes, when they're healing honestly instead of quickly? What if the time it's taking isn't evidence of weakness, but evidence of depth? If something mattered deeply, why would it resolve shallowly? If it shaped you, why would it disappear overnight? Maybe your path isn't slower. Maybe it's more thorough. Maybe you're not stuck. Maybe you're integrating. Integration doesn't look dramatic. It looks like quiet nights of reflection, moments of doubt followed by small realizations, gradual shifts in how you speak to yourself, tiny decisions that protect your peace more than before. Those things don't show up in announcements, but they change your life. You're not frozen. You're unfolding. Comparison compresses your story. into a single unfair question. Why can't I move on? But the real story is longer. You haven't moved, just not in the visible, dramatic way you expected. You've moved in understanding, in awareness, in emotional strength. Even tonight, listening, reflecting. That's movement. Stillness can be movement. When it's conscious, you don't need to match anyone else's pace. Their healing doesn't define yours. Their timeline doesn't measure yours. There was never a universal clock. Only your process. Only your depth. Only your pace. And your pace is allowed to be human. So if it feels like you're the only one still stuck, remember, you're only seeing the outside of their journey and the inside of yours. That comparison will always feel unbalanced. Come back to what's real. You're here. You're aware. You're trying. You're growing in ways that don't always feel visible yet. That's not being left behind. That's being in the middle of becoming. You're not late. You're not failing. You're on your path. And it's moving, even when it feels slow. Especially tonight.